ma. This is ke ma. When everything, you go into the bush, when everything is in order. That's what, and then we tell stories and have tea, and this is the life of a Dene, I think. Truly, this is our place of connection to the roots of our ancestors, because all the different places we have, they're sacred places. Like today, the Hawaiians, they're fighting for their sacred mountain. Intangible, they call it intangible things. Like, like we see artifacts and drums, and those are the artifact things you can pick up and you can smell it, you can see it. But intangible things, something you can't see it, but you know it, that's our connection. That's what we need to get back to more as Dene people. The things that we know about, but then we can't see it. Like listening, you can't see listening, but you can hear it, and it does something to our hearts. It does something to our spirit. When we become rooted back into our place, and there's lots of different places, and that's when we use place names. Years ago, we went around with elders, and we took them all over the place. Every morning we have a meeting at the office, and we have breakfast, and say, okay, today where you guys want to go? People, okay, last night I had a dream about the story, or something came to me. We follow that one, and then we would go to a place. There we would sit there and have a lunch over there, and people will tell you the story about that place, where that came from. So this place, I think now you would say, I went to Doig and I went to their camp where they told the story about how the fox got its color. You see, it's forever going to be connected to you now, because now that was passed on. That's how we passed on intangible things like teaching. Somebody told me that just recently, before we left, it's not necessarily the, oh, there you are over there. What's that? No, I think he has to tell you that, because it's his idea, his thinking. Huh? Awoke. Please come and share that story you told me, because that's so nice. The language? Yeah, about the language. You want to share with me? And I said, no, I think you need to talk to the people. Let them know what you know. So he's going to tell you about that.
I sat with an elder one time,
Got to speak it up so people hear you.
and what he said to me was, "Oh, you young people, you guys think you're so smart." In Dene, he said, "That was the late elder J. Marie, and because I was talking to him about our language, how my grandchildren, they have a different accent, and I said I need to teach them. And that's when he told me, and then he said, our language was never meant to be taught. It was meant to live it, to live the language. That's the only way a child will be fluent in our language about who they are. Because the language means that our language is connected to the land.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this whole notion of teaching, that's a day that means we live and grow and populate. And then he gave me a sort of like a puzzle that I had to figure out how, because did he really think about the 20th century and the computers, the languages, the multicultural connections that we have every day? And our children are faced with that on TV and on the internet and the games, about counting how many did they kill this time, maybe 1,200, that they're 100th place in the world tournament, So how do we find that medium to teach our kids how to basically be able to be fluent in our language because of the challenges that they're faced because in my time, I learned how to speak my language. By the time we got picked up at 6 years old to be in residential school, I was totally fluent in my language. So I never forgot it. But the following generations lack this whole notion of living your language to connect with who you are. So do we all, I used to call my granddaughter the wannabe Indian because just the way she behaved and acted, and I said, if you want to be a First Nation person, you have to live it, you know. Don't wear the Lulu pants and everything and say I'm Dene. Because it's all in your head, I said. Being who you are is all in your head. I said, I had a Chinese friend who was fluent in Chinese by the time he was 4 years old. He was never allowed to speak anything else. And then I said, to a certain degree, I said, because English is such a convenient language, it was also our fault that my children kind of were on the way to losing their language. So when we were when my daughter was still about 2 years old, the second youngest, 2 years old, I said, nobody's going to speak English in my house. And the mother said, nobody's going to say. So all of my children are all fluent in Dene. But it's the next generation that, kind of losing it because they're being taught in a community school.
Yeah.
And they're seeing it as if they're being taught math and English. There's really no separation of thought pattern when they're being taught Dene.
Mm-hmm.
So their interest is only in the school, and by the time they're home, they forgot what it meant. So it's very challenging for them to understand their language and speak it. They understand it, but they can't speak it. So I guess the challenge is that if that's the case, then we could commit ourselves to teach our children today, but the new generation have to be taught to lift the language. That's the only way I think our language will survive. And we need to do it in a way that it's going to be done at home. Because we're going to lose it in the community school because they're going to be taught in English and then have, an hour to speak Dene in the classroom? Because how I learned my language fluently was 24/7 Dene. That's how I learned my language. And the challenge is, like what you talked earlier, and I think I missed some of it, was we've got to be creative about how we want our children to relearn our language.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2 examples, because when the elder tells a story, you can actually see a picture in your head what he's talking about, because when a white man writes a story, he said, well, we walked till dusk and then set up camp and went to sleep, but an elder will say, sahada di two men di dawhala so they tell on to kazachu da he check it out and they say, he was painting a picture telling us how they were going through the spring hunt for beaver and on the spring camp. So it wasn't all about how heavy the beaver pole was, they never talked about that. It was the way they told their story. It just makes sense to me, because when my grandpa said, you can just imagine them in a canvas canoe, I said, in a fast flowing creek. I said, oh my God, they must be good swimmers, right? But that's the challenge for us, because our generation were the cutoff, I think, from modern day influences, because we grew up just before New Year's, when people were coming back from the trap lines. If they shot first, then it was a good winter. But if the community shot first, then there was something happened in the community. So there was this greeting too that had a message. So in everything that we did, there's always a message, I guess. Hey guys, that means that we heard the rifle shots, people are coming home from the trap lines. Or somebody that lost a family member while they were all trapping, and something happened. So these are the things we grew up with. I mean, we like to talk today. Grandpa was one of the hardest person to become talkative. They just didn't want to talk. and they only talked when they felt like it, I guess. So he was always going to visit them off and on, continuously, to eventually hear something from them. Because I guess that's the way, emotionally, it's not about every night you're going to be told a story.
Right.
I said, you got to earn your time to get that story. You know, make wood, put in the wood, get snow water. They taste your snow water if they say, and they trade the house to me. Ah, jeez. That's it for you. Your destiny is cut short, right? That's how they were. And they never beat around the bush about telling you what is in store for you, even just by tasting your water. You know, those were the powerful traditional elders. They just knew, and it's too bad that we lost a lot of ways. And a priest wrote about it. It was called The Ways of Knowing. I think our chief also probably read it. The Ways of Knowing. I said, there's a character in there. I know who that guy is. But we have a story about that. It was written by a lay person who used to be a priest, right? Father Jean-Guy. It's called The Ways of Knowing. And then there's another one that was written by, called The Wolverine Stories, was done by Pat, I think. No? Yeah? Yeah. No. But I really appreciate taking the time to listen to me. Thank you a lot for that. Masito.
Thank you. You know, you were right when the elders tell us a story. They make us just like looking at the picture.
Yeah.
And then I used to get scared when they tell me a story. Oh, what a big animal come in and things like that. So
one of the things that I heard in the translation of what, sorry, what's your name? Steve, you're from Assumption, right?
Yeah.
From Assumption said, is that the stories or the language has to be lived in order to be understood.
Yes.
And I think that's the key message, right?
Yes.
The key message is that it has to be lived in order to be understood. Whereas in the Western society, everything is separation. Everything is separated. Where in the Dene thinking, the Dene way, is that everything is connected to each other. Everything builds upon one another for that greater understanding of who we are. But it's all connected to the land.
Yeah.
You know, everything is connected, right? To the land, and then all the stories and knowledge comes in, and the more you know the stories, the more you understand. And that's why as we get older, we have a better understanding, where the knowledge about our experiences of life becomes wisdom. So that's where I feel like I'm 59 now. That's where I'm at. I'm in between the knowledge and the wisdom. So I'm trying to formulate that idea of wisdom. So, and a lot of older people, that's where we are today. And then once we know that wisdom, how do we pass it on? What do we do to pass it on?
I just want to say.
I thought you were 39.
I just want to say one last thing. Is there anybody hear about mosquito man or mosquito people story? Did you heard?
Yes.
Oh, that kind. Yeah, that's right on. That's what I want to know. So there's a lot of stories about mosquito man and then mosquito people from beginning to the end. At the end, the last mosquito said, for what you did to me. Forever until the end of the world, I will go after your blood. Still today, you go after us. It's an amazing story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And,
That's good. Fabian, you need to pass it on to you.